Welcome to Tips from Trestle. This podcast is dedicated to discussing the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and leadership. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. As a 25-year veteran of the hospitality industry, I've focused my work on creating exceptional experiences for the customers we serve. My goal for this podcast? Educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living to bring food and hospitality to the front of mind in our industry. Let's bring the innovative and passionate spirit of hospitality to everything that we do for the residents, families, guests, and employees we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Today on Tips from Trestle, I'm joined by Andrew Moret. Andrew is the Vice President of Culinary Services for Oakmont Group Management, the fastest growing premier senior living provider on the West Coast. He leads the culinary teams at over 60 communities throughout California and Nevada to provide seasonally curated meals while accommodating individual dietary preferences and needs. By cultivating strong leadership amongst his team, Andrew elevates the senior living dining experience and advocates for residents to ensure that being a senior is an enjoyable lifestyle and not a diagnosis. Andrew is a graduate of the CIA and has over 15 years of leadership experience in all aspects of fine dining and food operations. As an executive chef, he opened the Trumpet Vine in Simsbury, Connecticut, and he developed a food medicine program at St. Helena Hospital in St. Helena, California. Before bringing his knowledge and skills to senior living, he also worked in 2 Michelin-starred restaurants in the Napa Valley and as a private chef in the San Francisco Bay Area. Extensive training beyond the CIA included the Sichuan Culinary Institute in China and the award-winning 2941 in Washington, D.C. By cultivating strong leadership amongst his team, Moret strives to continue to elevate the senior living dining experience and be a driving force in the industry. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me today on Tips from Trestle.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.
So I want to start kind of at the beginning, right? Like I when I have operators on, for me, it's always fun to hear their story. How did you get into senior living? Obviously, it's not where you started. That's not probably initially on the career path. So kind of give us the Cliff Notes version of your story to senior living.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I feel like a lot of us find our feet here by happenstance. So yeah, I started off, with the goal of just being a chef and having a world-renowned restaurant. All I ever wanted to be growing up was a chef, and I pursued that through working at some restaurants. And I grew up in Connecticut, so in my hometown in Connecticut, and then went to the CIA in New York, and kind of traveled around New England before coming out to California. And and it was great, and I loved it, and I'm so happy I did that. And I came to a point in my life where I, was working at some really nice restaurants and enjoying what I was doing. And I was about to welcome a daughter into the world. And so I started looking for ways that I could create, a better work-life balance and be able to be there more for her. The restaurant industry is a very late night, which leads to sleeping in late in the morning industry. And I wanted to be present. I wanted to be present like my parents were for me. So I started exploring other avenues. So I tried being a personal chef. I tried working at a hospital. And then I stumbled upon senior living. It's interesting because when I was a kid, there was a gentleman who lived around the corner from us, and we'd have cookouts. So we did that on the East Coast, and his name was Dick Gallagher, and he would just say, when you're done screwing around with that restaurant stuff, you really got to look into healthcare. And so he worked for a convalescent home, and it always kind of just like stuck in the back of my head. And so, trying to find that work-life balance, trying to find something that was stable where I could get benefits and everything like that. I was looking I started looking in senior living, and I really wanted to find something that was still gonna let me be me, still let me be a chef, and I struggled with that because I was concerned about becoming, just an institutional, pulling stuff out of a freezer and throwing it in the oven kind of guy. So anyway, I found an organization that was really touting a made from scratch program and trying to, be on the cutting edge. And I opened a community with them. And that was a lot of fun. And it gave me that same rush and adrenaline and octane that I was looking for and loved from the restaurants. And opened the community, did some regional work for that organization. And then I found myself at Oakmont Management Group, kind of climbing the regional ladder, if you would. And now I'm the vice president of culinary services, and I love what I do every day.
Yeah, it's for me, it's always so amazing when I hear, because my story very similar is from coming through hotels and then stumbling upon senior living, not quite
Mhm.
exactly the way you did, but it was I want to do hospitality, I want to do things the way I'm doing them, but it'd be great to find a different venue other than Friday and Saturday nights till 1 a.m. grinding it out. And so,
Mhm.
man, I just love hearing those stories of how people got into senior living. One of the things that we had talked about as we were kind of getting ready to record was the kitchen environments, right? And we've
Mhm.
both experienced them early in our careers about how we'll just say toxic
Mhm.
it could be on the restaurant and hospitality side, and that's obviously something that we don't want now. And so kind of talk a little bit about the transition for you out of that into what you're doing now, and then kind of what we can talk more about what that looks like in your communities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we have a stigma in the industry, and unfortunately, I'd say I think that's leaving. I think that because of mental health becoming more prominent and okay to talk about,
Yeah.
because of just the new work environments that people want to work in, and just the attitudes people have about what they want to do about having a work-life balance. It's changed the landscape a lot. Um, and I think that's a really good thing. I look back at some of the restaurants that I've worked in, and to share just two quick stories on that. I worked for a restaurant, and we were on a quest to receive 3 Michelin stars. And it was an amazing restaurant, beautiful kitchen, state of the art. We had access to everything we wanted. The owner, money was no object. So we were getting live Arctic king crab and these like massive
Oh,
crabs in the
wow.
walk-in, truffles from, shipped in, like white truffles. We were like anything, like live uni urchin, like nothing was off the table. It was awesome. I was so excited to start working there, but every service was just the most toxic work environment I've ever been in. The chef de cuisine would just scream until he was hoarse throughout the whole service and throw things and yell. And it created an environment where there was zero teamwork. Everybody operated out of fear. My main priority was hoping somebody else would screw up before I did. Somebody else
Yeah.
would be on his radar before I was, and take the brunt of it. So there was a lot of sabotage going on in the kitchen. It was very much every man for himself. We were all just in survival mode. And, as a result of that, when the guide came out, we failed. And I don't think we failed because the food wasn't good or the cooks weren't talented or the chef wasn't talented. I think we failed as a result of poor leadership.
Yeah.
And one of the later restaurants I worked in Napa was a restaurant called Martini House, and Chef Todd Humphreys was the chef there. And we worked, that was one of the best environments I ever worked in. And every one of us was so happy to be there. We loved each other. We had each other's back. If somebody was struggling on prep, we'd jump in and we'd help them out. If somebody was behind on service because their station was getting hit, we'd jump in and give them a hand. And every plate that I put up there, I was proud of. Like I never
Yeah.
felt like I was phoning it in. Everything that went up, I was proud of. I was happy it was going out, and we had so much fun in doing it. And one of the things that I thought was such a cool leadership point is, if a VIP table came in, at some restaurants, a chef will kick the cook off the line and want to plate it themselves. And, we were empowered to plate all of our dishes, which I think says a lot. Especially, it makes the most sense, because are you going to give it to the cook that just plated 100 of them to plate, or are you going to do it when you haven't plated it in 3 weeks? So,
Right.
um,
Exactly.
but just
Yeah,
having that, just
no,
having that empowerment to like lead, like be a leader of your station. And so one day we all got pulled out into the patio, and the chef had told us that he received a phone call, and we had received 1 Michelin star. And we celebrated, and he was told us, how proud he was of all of us, but also like that this shouldn't really change what we're doing. And, we should just continue to be us, and we should still we should celebrate it, but then we're going to put the award in the drawer, and we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, which is creating good food. And I look at those two leadership examples of like where I've ended up in my career, and, very much what not to do. And then also
yeah.
what type of environment I want to create with my teams as well.
Yeah, no, being somebody that kind of came up through the front of the house, I didn't have to go through quite that abuse. I mean, but I lived around it all the time. And
Right.
what you're saying makes so much sense as far as, the environment of building a team, because even in the heat of the moment, right? You get into the middle of a dinner service, it can get a little testy, and that's just going to be the nature of how the operation works. But if you do the work like you're talking about around those services to make it go well, everything's going to click, and nobody's going to take it the wrong way. And if there's an issue, it goes by the wayside, because again, everybody's on the page doing the same thing. And so you're absolutely right about the learning what you do right and what you do wrong. Such great examples you give. And so one of the things that makes me think about is, what are you doing in your communities to build those environments, right? Because, as the executive chef, if you were that one person, you could absolutely do that on your own, but you're responsible for 60 kitchens. And how do you, from your position as a VP, put out that right message? How do you put things in place? How do you get the leaders below you to buy in and create the environment that you're trying to build for the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the challenging part. And I think that's where I've what I've had to learn as I've elevated is, how do I continue to keep that environment? How do I make sure that I don't lose touch with the front line, where they just think I sit in an ivory tower and make decisions, right?
Yeah.
With 60 plus communities, to hit every community, it'd take me, if I went every single business day to at least one community, that would take me just about 2 months to get through. So it's just unfortunately unrealistic to be able to be that hands-on. So I try to come up with ways where I can still do that. Through whether it be trying to field calls when people reach out, or trying to maintain a strong presence on LinkedIn, and acknowledge the chefs that are proud of what they're doing, and exemplifying good leadership. So a lot of our chefs will post things on LinkedIn, and I always want to make sure I'm always recognizing and commenting. And then sometimes it's picking up the phone and telling them, hey, I heard that our senior vice president of operations was in your community. He had a really great meal. Thanks so much for, representing our program, just so that like they know that I care.
Yeah.
And then I lead a team of about 11 regionals, and, I really try to be the leader that I would be as a chef in the community to them, and just try to drill, what my views on leadership are into them, and hope that they then carry that into their region, and then those chefs then carry it down to the line staff. So I firmly believe that the example I set will then be relayed down to the frontline team members in our organization. So and then one thing, the way that I found to try to reach out to everybody is just I make a point to regularly email all the chefs in our organization, just things about leadership. Sometimes it's focusing on our mission and values. Sometimes it's a YouTube clip, maybe like from Simon Sinek, or a quote from a book. And that's been a way that I feel like I can at least kind of contribute. And I think as chefs elevating themselves, from sous chef to chef, sometimes that leadership becomes challenging. A sous chef is usually like the right arm of the chef, and they're kind of the enforcer, and then they have to kind of become the nice guy. Especially working in a corporate environment, they really need to become the nice guy. So, trying to share those stories, I think stories and examples go a long way. And then what we've seen over, the past couple of months is like my regional team start to send out emails to all the different chefs in the organization, or we communicate a lot through the Microsoft Teams platform. And, chefs will start talking about how, their team has stepped up, and, how we've been focusing on authenticity, which is one of our values, and this month, and, how their cook has exemplified authenticity by doing, X, Y, or Z. So I think that through that work, it's starting to like gain legs, and we're seeing, or I'm at least seeing, from where I stand, just better leadership in the kitchens, and that trickled down. And you don't need to be the chef to be a leader in the kitchen.
Right.
You can be a cook and be a leader in the kitchen. You can be, I'm sure you've worked with how many people did not have a C in front of their name, or, a VP title, and they were strong leaders. So I just want to make sure that, everybody on the culinary team feels empowered to be a strong leader.
Do you find, for me, working with chefs, I find that there are some really great ones that embrace everything that you're talking about, but then you get some that are a little more old school, and it's like, well, I had to go through certain things, and so my sous chef or my lead cooks, they've got to go through some of those things too, and maybe they push back. Do you find that a lot, or what? Maybe better question is, what do you do when you do encounter that to kind of overcome that and kind of turn them around to your way of approaching it, which is, in my opinion, a much better way of doing it?
I think we all thought we had to earn a stripe coming up, right? Like,
Yeah.
I was much of the mentality of this is the way it is. Like, the only reason I stayed at that kitchen that I mentioned in the beginning was because I thought that's what we had to do. I thought that's how you become a good chef. You have to emulate and then be that. And, I'm not perfect. One of the first roles I had as a chef, I remember it was a Mother's Day brunch, massive, one of the busiest days in a restaurant industry. And some quiches weren't setting, and I remember I started screaming at a server who was like asking me a question, and he just turned around and walked away. He didn't stand there, he didn't say yes chef, he didn't take it like I expected it to. He just turned and walked away. And that was like the first time in my career I was like, oh, this doesn't work. This isn't the way. Maybe this isn't the way to do it. Like, it was like such a awe-inspiring moment for me. I was like, okay, I have to find a better way to talk to people. But I think that a lot of us chefs did come from that mentality, because it was, the mentality through the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. And as I mentioned earlier, fortunately, I believe it's on its way out. But a lot of chefs do still feel they have to operate that way because that's the way to get things done. What I've really been encouraging everybody to do is to learn about our incoming worker, the Generation Z, the millennial. And, I consider myself on the early end of the millennial generation. And, we get a lot of flack for it. You hear a lot of flack about the millennials, but then, the Depression era, workers gave a lot of flack to the baby boomers. So, it's all
relative,
course, right?
Yeah.
But I think that, as you look and study how they want to operate, it's a totally different mindset of, I want to punch a clock and make a paycheck and go home. And I don't care what I do as long as I'm making money. They don't care about making money. They care about, quality of life and flexibility and being able to work when they want and have money readily available and a flexible schedule and feel like they're part of something bigger and feel empowered to be part of the organization. And what I think is one of the most powerful things about the Generation Zers and millennials, as opposed to like myself and, maybe some other generations, is, we were fear driven at work. Like, we need to have our job. We can't lose our job. I don't want to lose my job. Right. They don't necessarily care all that much. If it's not the right fit for them, they're out. Which is challenging as a leader to just like, sorry, I need you to come in because I know you wanted to go to that concert on Saturday, but I need you to come in. And they're like, oh, well then, I quit.
Yeah.
And it happens. So I think we have to learn how to because of that, they're unwilling to bend to our expectations. So you can scream and yell at them all you want. They'll just quit and go get a job somewhere else. And it's a buyer's market right now, right?
So
I try to educate and explain that like we're not going to be able to beat it into them. We're not going to be able to get them to change. We as leaders in the industry need to change. We need to create a department that they want to come to work in and that is appealing. We need to create a department that's a healthy work environment for them, that gives them the flexibility.
Yeah, as you were talking through that, it made me think about some articles I read earlier this week where they were talking about quiet quitting, right? Or some people refer to it as work your wage. And there were some people that were kind of like, well, if that's what you're going to do, then just go find a different job. And in my mind, it's kind of like, well, but isn't that really the way it should be, right? Like that's like, what kind of environment am I creating where I think they should do more than that? I need to create an environment where they don't feel like that's the way they should be operating, right? How do I invite them into the team and make them feel like they don't need to do that? They want to be more. And so I think you're right. I talk about hospitality with a purpose all the time when I'm talking to students or people who don't know much about the industry. And I think we have such a huge opportunity to sell that in senior living. And so one of the things also I was curious about, like, what do you guys look for? You talk about the generations and building leaders. What are you looking for in up and coming superstars, if you will, frontline employees that have potential? Like, what are some of the things that Oakmont looks for, that you look for as you're looking to kind of build your bench, if you will?
I think that it's always looking for, hiring a warm body is never a good idea. It's always looking for somebody that has the opportunity to do more, or want more, at least for themselves. I think that, like, again, we have like an obligation to kind of right the wrongs of our past and our predecessors and create a healthy work environment. So looking for somebody that is not going to contribute to toxicity at all. Looking for somebody that wants to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And being in senior living, it's hospitality, but it's healthcare, right? So in addition to providing a service, for our residents, we're also taking care of a very vulnerable population at end of life. That's what it is. So wanting to make sure that people want to be a part of that and do something special. I think that the more people that get into it because they want to make a difference, the better. I think that when we look, every organization has, their mission statement or mission and values. And whenever I hire anybody, I really try to find somebody that our values resonate with, being an authentic team member, working through teamwork, being compassionate, having commitment, and showing resilience. Excuse me. I think especially like the resilience over the past couple of years has been so important. Having somebody that is able to creatively problem solve, giving them the latitude to creatively problem solve so that they can actually feel like they're a leader in the department, regardless of their position. Looking for somebody that is not only going to commit to us, but I'm going to commit to them. I think we need to not just expect our team members to show up to work every day just to collect a paycheck, but they need to feel that we've also committed to them and are creating a level of psychological safety that creates a healthy work environment for them to come to. And then, with compassion, just being kind. Working in healthcare, obviously you have to be a compassionate individual, but at the same time, I think that we need to be kind to one another. I mentioned in that first restaurant, we'd sabotage each other. We'd throw each other under the bus. It was all every man for himself and, just trying to get out alive at the end of service. And, we need to be nice to our team members too. Everybody is fighting their own battle. Everybody has their own challenges going on. We've got, care providers that are working 2 jobs and providing for their family. Like, I don't need to, yell at them because they didn't turn their team member meal ticket in on time, right? I think it's so important. We focus so much on taking care of the residents. We also need to focus on like taking care of one another, and that leads to teamwork and just accomplishing everything together as like one cohesive unit. no matter what department you're in, no matter what role you're in, we should be focusing on everything. And I think that with the incoming generation of worker, that's what they want. They want to be a part of something other than just their defined name tag. So letting them step outside of that, and then, like the first value, authenticity, just being yourself. And if you can be yourself and represent all of those values, that's a team member I'll hire 10 times out of 10. I think it's so important that you're not shining it on for anybody, and it's just you, and you can show up every day as you. And if you can do that, you're going to like where you work every day.
Yeah, no, it kind of reminds me of, some quote. I'm trying to think of the business quote that it was. I think it was Mark Cuban that talked about, if you take care of your people, your people take care of your customers, right? And we always sit in this world of we're so focused on residents, right? Which is so important to our business. Don't get me wrong. But I think when you step back into more of the leadership role, like you need to be more invested, like you said, in how do I build a team? How do I build the team together? How do I get the departments to work with each other? Like you should be spending, I would say 85% of your time on those things as a leader, as opposed to you got to talk to residents, you got to get feedback, you got to do those things when you're there in front of them. But we spend so much of our time not in front of residents when you're in the leadership spots. And I think what you're saying speaks volumes to how we're going to get this next generation of employees to buy into senior living. So kind of getting that younger generation and thinking about frontline employees, if you had like a top 3 or a top 5 list of things that they could do to prepare themselves for that next step in their growth, what would you tell that frontline cook or that server in one of your communities? Hey, you have potential, work on these things, or look at these 3 or 4 things. How can I help you in those areas so you can be better? What would you recommend?
I think that as in any role, I think that it's knowing where you want your next step to be. When I was a cook, and if my chef came over to plate something, if he went to go like reach for a tasting spoon, I'd be like the one handing it to him. Or if he was going to go plate something, I'd be sliding, a plating spoon across the pass to him. So, I feel like knowing what you want your next step to be, and then just taking that role and feeling empowered to take it. I think that I always tell people, like, make it a non-issue for me. Like, make me look so stupid if I were to hire anybody else, just make it a non-issue. I think that there's a little bit of fear sometimes with people about going above and beyond. They don't want to put themselves on someone's radar. They don't want to outshine their boss. I think that as leaders, we need to understand we have to hire people better than us. Like, the only way we're going to get better and move up is by hiring people better than us. Like, I'm so fortunate to have the leadership team that I do underneath me, because I feel like I don't even look at myself as any better than, or, I look at I'm steering the ship, but we're all, working to get it to move in the right direction. And I think that, down to like the frontline team members, it's like, if you're a cook and you want to be, a sous chef, like, start doing the things that you see your sous chef do. Take the temp logs every day. Make sure that you're checking the line. Make sure that, we're in compliance and we're checking the dates of everything. If you're a dishwasher, get through those dishes as quickly as you can so that you can jump on and help with prep. But just always be working for that next task. Not only is it going to get you ready for that next role and make it a non-issue, a no-brainer, but also I think it increases your value. I heard a quote that, your boss is only going to pay you, what they think you're worth, but you only know what you're worth. And I think you need to know what your value is. You need to know what your worth is, and you need to show it to people. And if you're just, I've learned some of the coolest tricks from dishwashers when it comes to prep. And if you're just sitting there doing the dishes and that's all you want to do, and that's fine. Like, some people don't necessarily want to take a next step, and we need, just consistency there as well. But if you are somebody looking for like that next thing, like, just jump in and do it. And again, that's where we sometimes as leaders fail, and we don't create an environment where people feel confident, like stepping outside of their zone and taking on that next step. So, I think it's like always evaluating yourself and thinking about like how you can help out more, what you can do more, developing a strong relationship with those around you and ahead of you so that you can articulate where you want your next steps to be. And then just showing that you're capable of it and showing your value and showing your worth.
Yeah, everything you said makes so much sense. Like, it's just that, like, do you have initiative? Where do you want to go? How do you get there? Ask questions. There's so much good stuff in all of that. And so I appreciate you sharing that. So, well, Andrew, we're actually right on time. And so what I wanted to do though was I wanted to give you an opportunity. Tell us how people can connect with you, how they can learn more about Oakmont. Just kind of give us your information as we wrap things up here today.
Yeah, absolutely. So Oakmont Management Group, we have two brands in our organization, Ivy Living and Oakmont Senior Living. You can find us on oakmontseniorliving.com or ivyliving.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Charles Andrew Moret, and I'm Vice President of Culinary Services for Oakmont. I'd love to connect with anybody. And if anybody's looking for, opportunity or has questions or has a best practice they want to share, I love being a collaborative partner, with other organizations, with some of my counterparts in other organizations. I love talking about what we're doing, what you're doing. And, we, again, creating an environment where we can push each other and just do better, not only, for ourselves and our organizations, but also for the residents.
Absolutely. So, Andrew, thanks so much for joining us today on Tips from Trestle, and best of luck with you and Oakmont.
Thanks so much, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
So there you have it, another one in the books. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. You can follow or direct message me on LinkedIn, where I'm always commenting and posting about food, hospitality, and leadership for the senior living industry. Or give me a follow on Twitter at ahfish or Instagram at aaronhfish. And check out my company, Trestle Hospitality Concepts, at www.trestlehospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.